What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, and in this video, I'm going to be going through my Week 9 wide receiver rankings. So going through the top 36 wideouts for this specific week. While you guys are watching, if you enjoy the content, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have any fantasy questions, could be trade related, waiver wire, doesn't have to just be start sits. You can drop those down below, and I will be getting back to every single person. But before we do jump into the number one spot, I just want to let you guys know about Underdog Fantasy Football. If you guys want to sign up for Underdog, you can use the link in the description. They will double your first deposit up to $100, and they have some, pretty solid weekly drafts if you want to have, a fantasy team for one specific week. They also have player props. One player prop that I'm looking at this week for the Thursday night football game is the Miles Sanders 7.5 receiving yards. I'm looking at the under on that one. 7.5 may seem like an easy number to hit, but he has actually gone under that in 2 out of 7 games. The Eagles are big favorites. I think it's going to be a run-heavy affair. Probably going to be limited passing volume, so that's one that I'm looking at. But I mean, they've got props for Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, all the big names. You're going to get those player props. So if you guys are interested, like I said, link in the description. But let's just jump right into the rankings. So at number 1 here, I have Tyreek Hill. I feel like this top 4 is pretty locked in. Hill at 1, Jefferson at 2, Diggs at 3, Cooper Kupp at 4. If Cooper Kupp wasn't dealing with an ankle injury, he would be up at number 1, but he missed a practice on Wednesday. So we do have some other stud wide receivers, so he does get bumped down to 4. But if we're looking at Cooper Kupp's performances against the Buccaneers since Todd Bowles has taken over as defensive coordinator, obviously now the head coach, but it's still like Todd Bowles' defense. Cooper Kupp has just absolutely torched the Buccaneers. So he's played 4 games. He had a game with 15 targets, 9 for 121 and a touchdown. He had a 13-target game with 11 receptions for 145 yards, a 12-target game where he went 9 for 96 and 2 touchdowns, and then the fourth and final game was, I believe, the playoff game, 11 targets, 9 for 183 and a touchdown. So he's basically a lock to go off. If he's playing in this game, I mean, you're starting him anyway, but if he is healthy, you should be expecting a massive performance out of Cooper Kupp. At 5, I have Devontae Adams. I'm not really fading away from his, illness game. I feel like it's just a fluky thing. I think he'll be, back to his normal Devontae Adams self here in week 9. At number 6, I have T. Higgins. I know the first, sample size of Higgins playing without Jamar Chase wasn't great, at least for this year. I still think he's going to bounce back. I think that was just an overall down game from the Bengals offense. I still think he's a locked-in wide receiver 1 moving forward. At 7, I have A.J. Brown. The reason why I guess maybe he's a little lower than people would be expecting, I just don't think this is going to be a favorable game script for the pass catchers. He's kind of just going to have to get his work done early, which we know he can do like he did against the Steelers. I mean, the dude torched them like in that first half. So it's possible he repeats that, but I think it's also possible if he gets off to a slow start, it could just become a very run-heavy affair, since the Texans do have one of the worst, if not the worst, run defense in the NFL. At 8, I have DeAndre Hopkins, and some people may argue that he should be higher, and, I understand it. His first 2 games, he had a 14-target, 10-catch, 103-yard performance, and then he followed it up with 13 targets, 12 receptions for 159 yards and a touchdown. I will just say this is a tough matchup against the Seahawks, who have actually allowed the 3rd fewest points per game to wide receivers. Obviously, I'm still firing up DeAndre Hopkins as a super strong play, but at this point, we're kind of just nitpicking between these elite options who are going to be in our lineups anyway. At 9, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Finally looks like he's back. He's healthy. He's a wide receiver 1 rest of season. Number 10, I have Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill just continue to dominate. That offense looks super strong. I think he's a great wide receiver 1 play. At 11, I have Mike Evans. Despite the Buccaneers' overall offensive struggles, the passing volume is still there. Like the yardage numbers are still solid from Brady. So I still think Evans is going to continue to be a wide receiver 1, which honestly kind of raises the question of how high his ceiling could be if they clicked. Like if we're looking at, similar volume, but Brady's throwing 2-3 passing touchdowns a game instead of, 1-0, then I mean, Mike Evans could be a mid-tier wide receiver 1 if they do figure it out. Back-to-back at 12 and 13, I have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Both just continue to ball out. Both are super strong plays moving forward. At 14, I have Chris Olave. My guy Chris Olave continues to produce. He has a very strong weekly floor, but has also shown the ability to put out some boom games. With the status of Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry still pretty up in the air, I think you just continue to fire him in as a very strong wide receiver 2. 15, I have Chris Godwin. Godwin's taken a little bit of a backseat to Evans in terms of their production during these struggles. It kind of makes sense. Chris Godwin is coming off that ACL, so he is probably someone who's going to be peaking in the second half of the season. But I still think with all the bye weeks this week, he's going to be a solid wide receiver too, and a high-end one at that. 16, I have Michael Pittman. I feel like people have kind of just, tossed Michael Pittman aside now that Matt Ryan is not playing. I still think Pittman is going to be a strong wide receiver too moving forward, probably like a mid-tier option rest of season, but he's not someone where I'm like going to be relegating him to like a fringe top 24 guy. He's someone I'm going to continue to fire into my lineup until, he's proving that he's either not commanding a solid amount of volume or he's just not producing. At this point, I think I'm going to continue to fire him up here at wide receiver 16. At 17, I have Jacoby Myers, and he continues to be one of the most disrespected wide receivers, both real life NFL and fantasy. I feel like people are still viewing Jacoby Myers as a wide receiver 3. This dude is averaging 15.9 points per game, and that's through 6 games. Like, it's not some sort of crazy small sample size. 15.9 points per game. These are his 6-game finishes, or just his overall point scores. So 10.2, 18.5, 24.1, 10, 11.4, and 21. He has a few boom weeks in there. He hasn't gone under the double-digit threshold, which is crazy impressive. He's a locked-in wide receiver 2 moving forward. At 18, I have Terry McLaurin. He's someone I talked about a decent amount in the wide receiver start sit. Taylor Heineke coming in has given Terry a huge boost. He just gives McLaurin the opportunity to make plays that Carson Wentz did not. So I think he's a strong mid-tier wide receiver 2 option. And then at 19, I have Gabe Davis. I've seen some people in the comments kind of leaving questions like, oh, do I start Gabe Davis or this player? My general philosophy for Gabe Davis is that he either needs to be a consistent start in your lineup or he's going to need to be someone you trade off your team. You guys may disagree with me on this. This is just my general philosophy here with Gabe Davis. For Davis, we know he is a crazy high ceiling, crazy low floor type of play. So in my mind, we just have to accept that that's what we're dealing with. He's like a Mike Williams from last year. So we're playing him in our lineup. We're going to get the week where he puts up 30. We're also going to get the week where he puts up 4. But when you're not starting him consistently, this is what ends up happening. He puts up a boom game. Maybe he's in your lineup, maybe he's not. The next week he comes out, puts out a dud. Then you're like, can I trust him in my lineup? Maybe not. You sit him. Maybe he has another dud game. You're like, oh, definitely not starting him. Then he has the boom week. He's on your bench. And then you start him the next week, and then he busts. That's kind of the cycle you get in if he's just not a locked-in start. So if Gabriel Davis is not someone you feel confident trusting on a week-to-week basis, he is someone I think I would be trying to trade. And I think you could probably bring in a top 20, top 18 wide receiver that you feel much more comfortable with. So I just think, I would throw that out there because I have seen some people, debating on starting Gabriel Davis. If you're not someone who wants to tolerate a lot of weekly risk, which isn't like, a good or bad thing. It's just, everyone likes to play the game differently. If you do not like to tolerate that risk, he would be someone that I'm trying to move off of because I don't think he's going to all of a sudden develop, a crazy high floor. That's just not what his role is in this offense. Now moving over to Christian Kirk here at 20, just a solid number 2 for fantasy. At 21, I have DJ Moore. Some people may think this is low. I feel like this is kind of appropriate. We've seen PJ Walker come in and just be a massive upgrade for DJ Moore. In the 2 games with Walker as the starter, Moore has a 7 for 69 and a touchdown game, and then a 6 for 152 and a touchdown. He saw double-digit targets in both of those games after only seeing double-digit targets once in the first 6 weeks. So I think he's going to be a locked-in wide receiver 2 moving forward. I'm not going to say I'm completely bought in. Like, I'm obviously going to be expecting to see some regression here, but I do think, it's clear at this point. The quarterback situation now going to Walker is a massive upgrade from what he had. I think we can all agree on that. At 22, I have Tyler Boyd. I talked about it with T. Higgins. The Bengals were underwhelming in their first game without Chase. I still think Boyd is going to be a solid wide receiver 2 as the Bengals number 2. At 23, I have Devonta Smith. He's in an interesting spot here, going up against the Texans. Wouldn't say it's an ideal matchup for the wide receivers for the same reasons I talked about with A.J. Brown, but I still think this week with all the buys, it's like a back-end wide receiver 2. 24, I have Juju. There's a lot of, cooks in the kitchen in that Chiefs wide receiver room, but at this point, Juju is still kind of holding those guys off. Heading into the bye, he had a few monster games in a row, so I like him here as a top 24 option. At 25, I have Allen Lazard. It's still kind of iffy on whether or not he is going to be able to suit up for this game. I think if he's fully healthy, you could probably bump him up a spot or two, but somewhere in this like fringe top 24 area, I feel like, is fair. 26, Adam Thielen just seems like a safe wide receiver 3 this week. At 27, I have Josh Palmer. You guys may have noticed that I did not have Keenan Allen, early on in these rankings. It's not even looking great that he's going to play this week, which is very, very concerning. He didn't practice, and they basically came out, didn't practice on Wednesday, and they basically came out and said, like, yeah, the injury isn't reacting the way we expected. It's not good. I mean, the dude has missed an insane amount of time. He comes back, doesn't play a full game. He has the bye week, and he's still not ready to go. Like, it's not great. Mike Williams, we know, is going to be out, so Palmer could be stepping in as the wide receiver 1. And, some people may think he's just going to command a ton of volume. It could be a tough spot for him, but I think, high-end wide receiver 3 is probably where he belongs, assuming that Keenan Allen is out. And then 28, I have Curtis Samuel. I think McLaurin has separated himself at this point with the upgraded quarterback with Heineke, at least fantasy-wise. And then 29, Rondell Moore, seeing a solid amount of snaps. He's running the clear wide receiver 2 routes for that offense. Tough matchup against the Seahawks, but still, like a flex play, wide receiver 3 option. 30, I have Garrett Wilson. Wilson has definitely kind of become the beneficiary of a lot of the turmoil in this Jets wide receiver room. You've got Elijah Moore requesting the trade, now not, playing a ton, getting out snapped by Denzel Mims, which is just wild. And then you have Corey Davis, who has missed some time. So if Garrett Wilson can kind of, stay as the clear-cut number 1, I think he does have some fantasy value. 31, we have Brandon Cooks. It looked like Cooks was going to get traded. It seems like he wanted to get traded. And then now he has, missed, I believe, back-to-back practices for personal reasons. So we don't even know what's going on here with his status heading into week 9. So just a situation we'll have to monitor. And then just kind of, rapid firing through these last few names. Darnell Mooney at 32, put together some decent games. Justin Fields, definitely playing a little bit better as a passer, seeing some more volume. Romeo Doubs here at 33. We'll see what happens with Lazard. That would definitely impact his, value this week. Duvernay at 34 with Rashad Bateman out. Allen Robinson at 35. If the Bucs secondary continues to be banged up, he could move up a little bit. And then sad to see Drake London all the way down here, but no volume out of the Falcons offense. So he is slotting in here at wide receiver 36. But that is going to wrap it up for these rankings. If you guys want to see the running backs, those are already posted. If you guys want to sign up for Underdog, get that deposit match. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. You guys can check that out in the description using code Quinn if you're doing it not through the link. But thank you guys for stopping by, and I will see you guys in the next one.